Welcome to the Wolf's Den,
the podcast where passion
hustle,
and collectibles
collide.
collide.
We spotlight the leaders and innovators of the hobby, women entrepreneurs, female athletes, breaking barriers in sports, business, and collectibles space.
From rare finds to business insights, we bring you personal stories of perseverance, growth, and what's trending in today's industry. Whether you're a new collector or returning to the hobby or a leader forging their own path,
This is the Den, where the hustle never stops. Okay, so we're back again for the second episode with Morgan Jon Fox. Howling It Out with him. We have some interesting topic to discuss. Hi, Morgan.
Hello, welcome back.
Okay, so first topic. Are collectors today more motivated by emotional attachment or financial upside? Your opinion.
I do not know. I think that I don't know that breakdown. I think that clearly the folks who are at the forefront of the sort of like influencer side of things understand that an audience will click on something if it discusses, if it has stakes to it,
Yep.
right? And the way that, it's just like in my area of storytelling, we have to create stakes to make a story interesting. And I think that was a really important selling point of this world and why a lot of the growth that has happened is because we see a big sale on MSNBC or on ESPN or Yahoo Sports. People are like, wait a minute, what's that all about? It's drama,
Yes.
right? It's stakes.
Yep.
Do I have something worth that? If I open this pack, will I get something worth that? So I get why that's a big part of the ecosystem of the influencers and streamers that exist. But I think that more likely than not, that the majority of people are clearly still the people who aren't plugged in, who probably have never watched the hobby, who probably don't know who you all are, who maybe don't even know what the National is. Like, I'm surprised. I talk to random collectors, like, I'm going to the National. Oh, what's that? I'm like, oh yeah, I forget. Probably the majority of the hobby still doesn't know because they just go to Target and buy a cards or GameStop, and they don't consume the ecosystem. So it's hard to say because the loudest person in the room is usually going to be talking about financial stakes. But I think the majority of the hobby probably still is, like a parent trying to collect with their child or something like that.
No, but as a storyteller, as a director, you like to capture, moments and stuff like that. Is there a space right now in our hobby that maybe more storytelling, that could maybe change some of the outlook, the transaction part of it that could, make it more sentimental.
Yeah, I actually think what's interesting about Fanatics' position in the hobby currently is that they are very smart folks. They've hired a lot of really, really brilliant minds, I believe, over there. And so some of the advertising they've done, for example, has been emotional nostalgia plays, memories of collecting from when you were a kid and now taking your child to have a full circle situation, something like that. I actually, to be honest with you, recently met Michael Mahan at an event at the National and was invited to make some pitches. And I have some pitches in the works that are nostalgia based to them. And I just think that we have to cycle more into nostalgia based marketing, especially, but also storytelling around things that are not, focused solely on the financial stakes of things, but on the emotional stakes of things. Because to me, that's the long play here.
Yeah.
That is the way after someone loses some money on a break, they don't just say, screw all this, I'm never coming back.
Yep, exactly.
After someone loses money in a break, they stick around and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that again, but I still am going to go find the cards that I want because I have an attachment to them, because I want to look at them, because I'm a nerd like that,
And I've always think that's what their target is. If you think about what they've been doing the past couple of years, Tops has been sending athletes to stores. And that's not just for financial, obviously they're selling product, but to have kids create this memory with Tom Brady in this store, or with
Mm-hmm.
Vladimir Guerrero in Toronto, it's to create memories. And they're giving athletes cards kind of like to trade with kids,
Mm-hmm.
those are
Mm-hmm.
lasting memory that will make this kid probably be a collector even after 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they know that in the end, the storytelling, the nostalgia part will play a big part.
In the sustainability,
Yeah.
the long run.
Hmm.
Is that was the big
Absolutely.
worry about the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? That all these people, all these new people are coming in, new money,
Yeah.
and when it went this way, how many of them left, how many of them stayed.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
all about the staying power.
And people stayed because they still love watching sports and collecting, obviously. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that is the end part. That's why I think this interview with you is like it's so important to me. You're my second guest. uh, and I think you tell a different story. And I think what you created in the hobby too is I think I love the film, and it's something that people could look back. Obviously, we're not focusing on the market, on the value, but more like the stories. And that's what you did that's different than other film, in my opinion, about the hobby.
Right. In terms
Yeah.
of,
It's
I
just
think,
capturing transactions, not the transaction.
yeah.
Right. I remember when you recorded, when we opened that box and pulled the downtown Lamello. We're not talking about the value of the Lamello right now, but it's just the following, the joy of pulling it at that time. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I agree with you that there
Mhm.
are elements in the doc that are about the sort of emotional to and fro. To be clear, we got nominated as an Emmy, and we got nominated for an Emmy in the business
Oh, okay.
category, so financial and business category of the documentary Emmys. And I think that's because that is what that documentary mostly focuses on, is the markets. I mean, that's how we sort of open the documentary, is about PWCC initially starting that index fund. We kind of set that up. I wish we could have focused more on story.
Yes.
A lot of documentaries, the way they actually are made is by going and embedding themselves, or filming with a handful of people, and then sort of looking at that footage to decide where the story is. And
Mhm.
then they go and like spend a lot of time over the next year with that person as story unfolds. And I wish we had the ability with our production schedule and budget to do that, because then we could have really got into the more nuanced
Yeah.
story and nostalgia based sort of emotional connection. Whereas I do feel like, I mean, I saw criticism of this from some YouTube channels or whatever. Yes, I did watch you, if you're listening, the ones that hated on us a little bit because you're like all about junk wax cards and how you love them and you're in this for the love of the hobby. There's a few of them that dragged us a little bit because we just focused on whatever the superficial
Mhm.
financial aspects of the hobby. But I wish we could have. It would have been a better documentary if we had been able to embed more into a
Yeah.
singular story that evolved, that
Mhm.
was more emotionally based. And we just didn't have the resources to do that.
No, I think you tried. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you connect a few stories, with Danny, and obviously with Josh and I. I think that was critical to kind of tie it in. There's a few people that kind of came up and it's like, oh, I love the story that, you and Josh, that type of thing. So I think it did add a little, but obviously the focus was kind of like the money in the hobby, at that time. So
Right.
yeah,
It it it
it is.
makes a sexy trailer.
Yep.
If you're like $1 million, $10 million, it's like I
Yes,
don't know.
exactly.
I also was a director for hire, so that means that
No, no, no. Makes sense. Okay. I don't know if you know how to answer this one. Are influencers shaping the hobby more than the actual collectors, in your opinion?
I think that influencers in their current position today feels outsized by those of us who are plugged in,
Mm-hmm.
because that's all we see. And so for us, it's like, oh, everybody's talking about such and such. And really, when you compare the number of people watching those videos, the actual eyes on those videos versus the entire size of the collecting hobby, it's it's fairly small. Like I would say, I think we would actually be shocked that it may be something like 10% of the overall hobby is actually aware of that side of the hobby. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like but in 5 years, 10 years, as these younger collectors now who are walking around with their Zion cases, these like 10-year-olds who are, I'm like, what is happening?
Probably have more money than us buying
By the
products.
time, yes, by the time those kids are 20, 25, especially by the time they're 30,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be enormous that the impact that the influencers of today, the podcasters of today, you all, etc., have on the hobby in the future. I just think right now it's still such a new thing that mostly it's the younger audience that is
Yeah.
tapped into that, whereas people my age, whatever else, I think in large part have no idea a lot of that stuff is going on just because they haven't made that transition to being so plugged in.
Yeah, and I think we're such minorities now. We're obviously in the space, but I think there's more people, younger people that's outside the space that's in the hobby now. So it's kind of weird for us to think of it that way, but because there are so many new people now, new eyeballs that it's what we see might not be reality anymore. We don't know because I think the hobby has grown so much, you know.
So the next question is basically, I guess, where do you see is the future of hobby more in storytelling or more in the analytics, market trends? Like, what do you follow? Like,
I do think that the future of the hobby is only going to be healthy if it's amalgamation of both of those. Like all these companies, again, like that are coming in today, and even the influencers who will continue to succeed. Some of these folks will, in 5 years, I probably won't still be doing it.
Yep.
But those who will continue to succeed are going to balance the two
Mhm.
because what happens when the market wipes out again? Because right now prices are very high. I have several cards that went up during COVID and during that early 2021 spike that happened in like February, March of that year when it really hit the peak.
Mhm.
I have cards that now are more expensive than they were then, to be clear.
Wow.
Like some vintage, like I have a Hank Aaron PSA 7 that right now is selling for well over what it sold at its peak then. So to me, I'm like, I don't know what's happening right
Mm-hmm.
now, but what I do know is that it's going to come down at some point. When, I don't know. But what happens then? Like, I guess those channels have to talk about the negative aspects of it going down. So you're
Yeah.
just going to follow that, or are you going to start to build in other things that keep a sort of episodic way of involving people in the hobby by caring about more than just the ebbs and flows of what the dollar value of something is?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think people that are smart are going to follow those trends,
Mm-hmm.
but people should be forecasting for the long
Yeah.
game and not just for like following just this moment, but how do I also invest in sort of a long strategy of content and of getting people into this industry? I don't know the answer. There's smarter people than me that are there's smarter people than me that are crafting those things, but I think that it's a battle right now for sure.
This is a question that's probably been bothering me a little. I don't do a lot of content based on whatever news yesterday, especially negative news. With PSA, with this or Breaker did this. Do you think right now when you're in social media, somewhat a person that's somewhat in the hobby, do you think there's a lot of negative things going on in the news right now for than positive?
Yeah, I think that it is interesting all the stories that pop up, right?
Mhm.
This is also so involved in everything we've been discussing this whole time, which is that the loudest voice in the room now truly can be heard. Before, the loudest voice in the room was heard in that room, right? But we
Mhm.
are now in an ecosystem where the loudest voice in the room is rewarded
Yep.
with upvotes, with likes, with views, with
Exactly.
shares on social media. So it's very easy for someone with, if you just do the run-of-the-mill complaint that about upcharges or whatever else, it's people are like, whatever, we've heard that one before.
Yep.
But if you say my PSA 10 cards flipped to a PSA 9 after or my PSA 9 cards were flipped to a 10 after I accepted the offer, that's new drama. And so, of course, everyone heard about that because it was like, wait a minute, what happened? It gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of attention. The podcast pick it up. The people on socials pick it up. It's just a hot button story. So I think it's actually interesting. The companies now that exist are big enough that there's not real ramifications unless we hear something like we find out Nat Turner has been skimming money and stealing cars, like something crazy like that, where you're like, wait a minute, we have to truly rethink everything. Other than that, none of these big companies are going to make these small little micro scams to get a couple of dollars. If so, it's maybe someone, again, I don't know that, I'm not talking about that PSA 9, PSA 10 thing. From what I understand, that's a glitch. But like, maybe there's a scammer somewhere in the chain of these giant companies who will do something wrong, but they'll be punished and it'll be addressed. But on a large scale, these companies are not attempting to scam. Even their prices are market value, and people clearly have no problem paying them. So like, what are we? It's just free market capitalism, whether we agree with that concept of society or not. So I just think that the fact that there are enough drama that people are getting involved in some ways talks positively about the growth of the hobby. There's enough people involved in the hobby that people can express their opinions and it becomes news. So, one other thing. So we filmed, when we were filming in the hobby, it's so interesting. We filmed at PWCC, no longer PWCC. We filmed at Beckett. Footage should not make it really in the doc. Beckett's no longer, owned by PSA now. We filmed at Panini, no longer a powerhouse. We felt like we were constantly filming at things that change. It's wild to see things change so quickly. But I actually think Beckett, I like the look of SGC's holders the best in terms of if it's just on its own. What I don't like is that it's different sizes and they don't fit in the Zion cases right and all that. But I actually think that in terms of what feels the most premium, I think Beckett slabs actually feel the most like I have something that has properly encapsulated my card. It looks like the most safe.
If you drop it, it's not going to damage your card, And they also have the plastic sleeve compared to other graders, That's the only reason why I don't like SGC, because when they put it in that black, thing, it kind of damages the edge sometimes. I feel like it has to have some sort of protection because there's no
another
plastic.
sleeve,
But that's I always like Beckett, but at the end of the day, it's what gets the most value when you resell. That's what.
What's gonna happen?
We don't.
Right. I'm just again, like you said, 5 years from now, so many things have changed. Like,
we don't know what collectors will do. A lot of the opinion is divided because like SGC, people thought, SGC is gonna be so much better because PSA bought them, but SGC kind of hit a stalemate after. There's no money being funded right now, until they have a correction, and now it's like, is this gonna happen with Beckett too? Are they just eliminating competition, or are they really gonna help the brand? We don't know.
I mean, I think they definitely want to have centers. They now would have, New York cards can be, they go to some place and then sort of like FedEx does, where there's a matrix and then they're sent to the different regions. So that they can theoretically have better turnaround times because things are, sort of parceled off. They now have sort of every corner.
Because they wanted one in Texas, and now that's Beckett, basically. But I don't think it's going to be Beckett. You know what I mean? They wanted an office in Florida, and now that's the SGC office. So, yeah. So I just don't think it's going to be continuing as Beckett and SGC. So I don't think so. So we're in agreement that. No. So the Howling It Out agreed session.
Also, long term, I'm curious because Texas and Florida are like some of the most friendly to businesses in terms of taxes and that kind of thing, whereas California is, towards the bottom in terms of like, like it has a lot of benefits to being there. but I
Mm-hmm.
could see some kind of certain headquarters staying there, but their manufacturing and stuff happening in other places, you know, I mean, or their
Yes.
processing just
And
being
the
in these
vault,
places where it's taxes is cheaper to do business.
well, the vaulting, I heard, Florida and obviously Texas is good for vaulting, so they don't have to send it to state that don't have, taxes and all that stuff. So I think they have a big plan in the end, and they're just slowly executing. Like I said, we're in micro, we're looking, but it's still just growing right now. I think we'll have a clearer picture in like 5 to 10 years from now. So
So,
um, thank you, Morgan. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate. Thanks for your patience. And well, I just want to thank you again.
Yeah, thank you all. I will at any time, at any point, help in any way I can. I've even offered to help run, help you out at your booth at the National. I know that Sharon was like, "Yeah, right. You're going to make up the value of cards or something," But listen. I'm a huge fan of you all. I'm envious of the hard work that you all put in, and consider you good friends. So thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure.
Thank you.
if you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.